Tonight, we're going to be doing some tutorials. I'm starting with figure proportions, basically taking a standard figure, and this is a pretty standard figure. We're going to make like a Hulk version and a very thin version and do like a heavy set version and just have some fun with it. So I drew this figure just to get us started. So you didn't have to sit through me drawing the first kind of more standard proportion figure. Ideally, this is an 8.5 head tall figure. So what I mean by that, and I'm just draw this small. I'm going to draw my head. Half is the neck. So that'll be about a half a head for the neck. And then about another head, another one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, just about. So that would be my shoulders kind of through here. My pelvis would be just about here. Just to kind of keep your proportions, just generally, you want about 2 head spaces for your lower legs here. So maybe just a little bit higher here. Basically, your pelvis ends here, your wrist starts just below that here. It's all pretty standard, and that's all fine, except if you want to draw a figure that has proportions that are different than that. It does get more difficult when you're doing figures in more of a dynamic pose like this. I don't want to just start doing figures like this though, because honestly, it gets pretty basic and there are resources out there for that. I think when you're working on basic figure proportions, the best advice that I have is to work through the proportions and then do a lot of sketches from artists that draw figures very, very well. The more of those you do, the more of a natural sense of proportion you'll get. I think that is a huge help. That's how I did it. It's really how everyone I know kind of did it. Measuring out your figures every time is just not a practical way to go. All right, so we're going to do the same figure. I'm going to do a Hulk version. So that's going to be my head. I'm going to base my figure off of that. And so the most important thing to know is just to start, the ratio between my head and my chest is going to be very, very different. So I'm going to draw the exact same chest shape that I would have drawn, just much larger. And so I'll have a much smaller head. And I think that just kind of makes sense. So here we go. My much larger chest shape. My shoulders, I'm also going to make quite a bit bigger. I'm going to just attach them on just as balls for right now. We're going to keep going through the body. My torso is going to be here. I want it to be quite a bit wider. So what that means is structurally, my whole chest area is going to be wider than it is long. And so that's really something I want to keep in mind. If my normal torso is going to be like chest would be shaped something like this, what I want to do is just go for something that's much more like this. So just much wider. My hips are also going to be much wider and shorter because he's just got a much bigger, wider body. And then my legs. So I've got one tube for my leg here, much wider in comparison, and same thing here. And you can see I'm drawing the exact same thing. I'm just really changing my sizing. My arms are going to be nice and wide. And again, I'm going to make them shorter because the whole point is to make them bulkier. And if I go long, it just makes them very tall and massive hands. I'm actually going to exaggerate the size. My hands are already exaggerated in size. If you look at this figure, those hands are very large for a normal human, but for a superhero, that works. You're always better off to have larger hands than smaller hands. And my lower leg, I'm going to do the same thing. I want it to be very wide and very short. I like to draw for my, when my calves are foreshortened, the lower legs are foreshortened, I draw up like basically a ball and then a tube that has kind of this sort of shape to it below that. And then I can attach my foot to that. And I just find that as a cipher, that really works for me well. And a nice big wide foot too. And I can even give him a larger back to really bring out the size. That effectively, I've got the head in the same position, but because he's got such a huge upper body, I'm exaggerating the size of his back. He'd have massive back muscles. So I think that really kind of helps sell it too. So there we go. A couple things I want to point out. I've gone very angular with all my forms. And I find that really helps. When you have a figure that's really big like this, I'm just basically thinking of this as like the Hulk. It can start to get really soft and kind of doughy looking really quickly if you don't use hard lines. So I tried to be very, very angular. I talked to Lee Weeks, and he was talking about using parallel lines in drawing, and I learned so much from it. Like it really kind of solidified, actually introduced me really to a concept that I hadn't thought about before. So this line of the arm here and this line, I want to make sure that are parallel. I want to actually get that here too. and maybe here too. And you can see how just getting those kinds of parallels going through the form just gives it so much solidity, and I don't know why it works. Lee explained it to me, and when he did, it totally made sense. And I need to talk to him about it because I don't remember exactly why. I just know that when I draw a figure and I think about that. By the way, I'm pressing a lot harder than I would for this stage of a drawing normally. This is how you end up with a real mess if you start pressing too hard too early. You want to go at light at this stage so you can lighten it down and have something that will kind of make sense and will work. So there you go. All right. So there's my first one. Meredith's not paying attention.
Nope.
You guys are though, right? I'm going to draw a much thinner version of the same figure. And so for this one, I'm going to again start with the head. You're supposed to start with the body and then put the head on it because you want to start with your center of mass and then everything else is appendages. But usually, I have to be honest, I start with the head, especially if I have a page and I've got multiple figures on the page. It's very important that their heads all work together in relation of sizing. And I find it makes it easier for me. So I start with the head. Now this time, instead of going wider versus the height, I'm going to go very, very long. And I want to keep my width pretty narrow. I like to just create a place along my pelvis for where my hips go. And then I can start my legs from that point. Same shapes, just much more narrow. I'm going to not go too narrow with the knees because a really thin figure wouldn't still have basically the same bones generally. The arms, just much longer and more narrow tubes. And it's important when you're sketching to not get too, you want to keep shapes that are pretty good for your overall drawing. Like the more accurate you can be with these shapes, the easier it's going to be. I'm going to make his head longer and thinner too. So what I did there is I took my basic head shape and I've just narrowed it out. And lower leg again would be very thin. So as much as I like a ball there, I'm going to go with more of an oval. Much thinner lower leg here. And I'll keep his feet thinner too. Basically, it's just a theme. I'm making everything much longer and thinner. So we're going to go into another example. I'm drawing all the same pose, but I think it helps to...
You can compare.
Right. Yeah. So I'm drawing a fat character now. And so what we're doing, I'm going to draw my same basic form for this just to start. Kind of breaking my own rule a little bit. What I don't want to do, unless I'm drawing somebody like Kingpin who is heavy but a little bit more like the Hulk, I want to draw like more of a regular person in terms of proportion. So let's see if I can get my regular person kind of proportions in first, and then we'll make them heavy set. And so I'm going to draw it in and then add that kind of to the top. It's such a huge part of successfully creating your own figures is drawing loosely and lightly first, and then lightening it down, which we're going to do in a minute, making adjustments, lightening it down again until you have something you really like, and then drawing your tight drawing. If you go too heavy with your pencil at this stage, you'll have trouble. So I've got my basic figure. I'm going to go ahead and lighten it. And so for the head, what I want to do is bring out the shape more like this. We're going to work on this one just a little bit. So, I'm just really basic broad shapes right now. The stomach area is going to come out like this. No matter how heavy somebody is, you always have a line here. So I'm going to define that line for the stomach there. It's going to be wider through the hip and then larger through the legs, but I don't want to be really, what I want to not do is something where it's really hard edge like this. We're not drawing like a grotesquely heavy person either, by the way. That would be a whole other thing. And so I'm going softer with my shapes and just making sure not to be hard edged. And then the arms too. What I don't want is a lot of hard muscle definition. Everything is much softer. So I have all the same basic form and shape. And we're going to take this head shape that I did. I know my eye is going to be about here. My nose will be here. My mouth will be here. I've got my chin here. I'm going to draw jowls that come out of the chin and kind of connect just basically like this. And then a double chin here. And you can see I don't have the same level of confidence with my form when it comes to this because I lose a lot of the landmarks that I'm really used to. drawing a heavier figure. Like you wouldn't have much of an indent here, and that's a landmark that that's something that I kind of rely on. But what I can do is still use my overlaps to create a sense of form. So I'm overlapping, because the shoulder's in front of the arm here, I'm overlapping that. I'm overlapping this over the arm here. I have an overlap here, much softer forms that can overlap. And so just in simple terms, I can get across a figure that loses a lot of the definition that I'm more comfortable with when I'm drawing a figure, just by making sure that I've got overlaps that make sense to me. But I find this figure is more difficult for me to draw than if I drew something that's like really over the top, like a really, really heavy, with like a lot of layering and that kind of thing. Then it gets more into something that's like creature design, where you're really starting to play with the figure a lot more. Doing something like this, where it's a natural kind of a figure, it actually makes sense as somebody that is overweight, but not caricatured, because there are obviously overweight people and you want to represent them, as accurately and as well as you can. I just want to say, this is not something you need somebody to really guide you through that much. It can be very helpful to have some pointers here and there and some nudges in the right direction. Like if things are going off and you're not really doing things, or you're doing something that's like an obvious mistake that you don't see, and somebody can catch that and really be a big help. And that makes a big, big difference. It certainly did for me. It was a great thing about working at Top Cow. But strictly speaking, when I was learning at Top Cow, it wasn't a learning environment where that's what we were doing. We were learning. I learned on my own. It's an accurate thing to say. I learned on my own. We all did. But we learned with guidance, and that does help. But that guidance needs to be pretty minimal. You need to look at it. It needs to be a systematic thing. So your basic figure, like, this figure right here, this is something I systematically learned. Nobody taught me any of this. And I'm not really teaching you guys either. I'm showing you a simple figure and I'm showing you some basic concepts about it, but it is something that you need to do and internalize yourself. And it's the only way to do it. So you need to study Loomis, study How to Draw Comics in Marvel, great resources for it, and do, sketches from comic artists, simple sorts of sketches. You know what? And we cover it all the time. I've talked about it so much, but let's just do one. We're going to do one right now.